Good morning, everyone. Lots going on. Here's an update on our postcard protest, I suppose. It's an interesting thing. Things like this, when they're organic, when they happen like this, it seems like almost obvious in retrospect, right? But I've been talking about how do you protest in Canada, what's a good way to protest in Canada. It doesn't seem to matter. We could just flood them with postcards. What's Up Canada says, do Canadians know that it's free postage to send letter mail to any MP, PM, or MLA free of charge? Even a postcard from a cereal box. Recycle and repurpose that empty Frosted Flakes box and join the postcard revolution. It's a good idea. You can send it to the Prime Minister's office, and you can just have a quick, short little message like, "Hey, we don't like what you're doing. Resign." It's not very good bankrupting the country and then blaming the virus when what's the problem was your bad policies. Resign. Or whatever you want to say. You do you. Okay, I'll do me, you do you. But it's a good idea, and you could, and apparently it's free postage, so you don't even have to put a stamp on it. Like, there are stamps on these, but I think that it's probably, like, the postage is paid. I'm not sure if they printed a stamp on them. Like, I haven't got my postcard yet. I'm sad, but I'm sure it'll show up in my mailbox soon. But I don't think that you actually need, if it's addressed to the House of Commons or if it's addressed to an MP or a PM or any of the people listed, it should be postage paid. It should be free. You should be able to just drop it in a mailbox with the address intact. You could draw a stamp on, I guess, if you wanted to. Anyway, this morning, like 2 minutes before my show, or before I started setting up for my show, 9:09 a.m., like just when I started putting this together, this popped up on my feed, and I thought, oh my goodness, I guess I'll listen to this while I open up the other tabs. And yes, I'll post it on Canada Poly and whatever. Apparently, it's International Women's Day, and okay, there's lots to unpack with all of that. But first, let's listen to what Justin Trudeau and Sophie Gregory Trudeau have to say. No ponytail on this one. I didn't see any hair flips. No kiss either. She gives a kiss to the public, but not to Trudeau. Okay, so Trudeau says, today we celebrate the accomplishments of women everywhere and recommit to building a future where they can do and be anything they dream of. As we look to build back better from this pandemic, that's what our feminist recovery is all about. Okay, so there's a couple of really cringe moments in all of this. But I was saying yesterday, and I was just talking with my family over dinner, and my kids had gone off to play, and I was talking to my wife about this. And I said, it's really interesting that women and girls are, and I didn't even realize it was an International Women's Day coming up. I didn't realize that's what today is, so apologies about that. But I said, it's interesting that women and girls are being driven to STEM, being driven to the workforce. We need to get women into the workforce. We need to figure out how to get women into the workforce, how to push them into, doing this work that we want them to do or that work that we want them to do. And my whole thing is, why can't we just let women do what they want to do? Like, full stop. Whatever you want to do is great. That's fine. But often what women want to do is there's societal pressure to get a good job and get a stable relationship and then have kids, right? And often good job and stable relationship mean post 30, right? So a lot of people put on hold their family building plans in order to satisfy society's demands of stable relationship, owning a home. And I mean, that's getting further and further out. And by the time they get to that point, they need help with conceiving a child because they've been on birth control for 15 years. We've made the ability to get pregnant an illness for which you must take daily medication. I think that that's odd. I think that that's a really big departure from humanity in the 1960s or pre-1960s. I think that that's a really strange thing. And is there a good time to have a baby? I think the common wisdom is there's never a good time to have a baby, but you should definitely have babies, right? And I firmly believe that having a family, having children that you're invested in is the meaning of life. I think that without that, there is, not that there is no meaning. You can find meaning. There's certainly things to find meaningful. But I think that one of the most fulfilling ways to live life, and I think that we're getting existential here, but I'll finish my thought. I think that the Bible is just written as like, this is kind of the way to live the most fulfilling life you could possibly live. Like, this is the instruction booklet that's been kind of distilled by man into, you should pay attention to this. And it's not perfect. Far from it. And I'm not well-read enough in any other religion to use any other religion as an example. I'm not even well-read enough to really comment on the Bible. But in my limited readings and listening to Jordan Peterson's speak about the Bible, that's kind of what I think. And so getting back to the meaning of life, in order to live a fulfilled life, investing yourself in somebody else and helping somebody else become everything that they can become, that's worthwhile. So why do we have to drive them into STEM? right? Why do we have to drive them into a career? Why do we have to teach them that the office social committee will be there in the end, right? Like they'll feed you applesauce and they'll hold your hand in your final days. Probably not. Probably not. Why can't we let women be women? Do what they want to do and be that whatever it is. And the other part of this is, my goodness, this is a long intro. The other part of this is I worked in children's mental health. Part of my job, I worked in a group home. And part of my job, I had prime kids. And the prime kids needed handling. You only got a couple of prime kids. And handling, meaning if they had a problem at school, it was your job to advocate for that kid. Because it's scary as a kid. You can't stand up to the adult who says you have to. Like, can I go to the bathroom now? No, finish your work first. Okay. Right? How do you stand up to the kid, to the adult who has that kind of power? You can't, right? So you have adults who are standing in for mom and dad, who care for you, who advocate for you. And it was my full-time job. I worked four 10-hour shifts a week, so Monday to Thursday. And so in the afternoons, I would have meetings with stakeholders of the kids. And then after school, the kids would come and they would be in my care, in the house's care. And in that role, it's very clear that maintaining a household takes work with stakeholders and interested parties and competing interests, right? We've got kids after school activities. We've got kids who need to be picked up from the bus. We've got doctor's appointments and dentist appointments. We've got random medical appointments. You've got all sorts of things that need doing. You've got dinner that needs to be made. You've got homework that needs to be done. You've got all sorts of stuff that needs to be doing. Who told women that this is not a job? Who said, you're being exploited here? You understand that you're not getting paid for this not job that you're doing. Like, this is an insane way to live the world. This is to live in the world, to put forward, this is the agreement we're going to have with you. We expect you to do everything a man can do and rear the children, only if you want to. Here's a pill to deal with that, right? It's insidious and slow, and it's been sold to women like this is freedom, just like these vaccine passes are being sold to the public as freedom. It was sold to women as a false freedom, and it's nothing more than the same prison. You know what it did? It doubled the income tax. Because the wages fell. The wages fell to accommodate the influx of women into the workforce. So the wages fell. The family makes about the same amount of money, but it doubles the income tax, right? Genius. International Women's Day. Okay, here are some eyebrow-raising things just in the first 30 seconds. I'm going to jump around a little bit. In the first 30 seconds, and then in the first minute and a half, there's just the references they make made me howl. Made me go, what? Okay, here we go. See if you could spot them.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, we hope you're all doing well.
And happy International Women's Day.
Women and girls are changed.
I have to say, I don't like that he stole my intro. Okay. Hello, come on, Trudeau. Do you watch my show? Okay, here we go.
Changing the world every day. Indigenous women, trans women, women of every background, origin, sexual orientation, or age, women with disabilities, women in every community here in Canada and around the world. We honor your power and your leadership.
Today is about celebrating the accomplishments of women everywhere. It's about the women who challenge norms, lift up others, and change our country for the better every single day.
You know, as a couple and as parents, we've made sure our kids understand that not one person is more important than another. Neither Justin nor I are afraid to label ourselves as feminists.
And although many feminists in our country have broken down barriers and paved the way and brought us to where we are today, we have to continue to build on their work, and that takes place in our everyday lives. This goes beyond the economic benefits it creates. This is about young women everywhere in our country. It's about making sure they grow up in a world where they can do and be anything they dream of. And everyone has a role to play in making that a reality. It's especially important right now when women are bearing the brunt of the impacts of COVID-19 and we face a she-cession.
We know that women, in particular, racialized and marginalized women, have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. They have shared their...
How much division can you drive into this? Oh, my goodness. My goodness. I was gonna cycle through images of Jody Wilson-Raybould and Dr. Jane Philpott and Cesar Chivanez as they were talking about how women can change the world. And the first 12 seconds where they were listing women, right? And again, could you get more divisive? Right? Like, it's just listing specific women to highlight on International Women's Day, right? Women that include men, in the definition, right? Ezra Levette says, you sexually assaulted Rose Knight and then said she just experienced it differently. Women can do anything they want, especially STEM careers. It's very, very strange. A new analysis, and then saying that women are disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic. The big impact from the COVID-19 pandemic has been bad policy. I've been saying that for months now. And if women are disproportionately bearing that brunt, if they are, I'd love to see the data they're using to justify that statement. I don't think they have any data. But it doesn't matter. If they are, then that's a policy failing. That's a policy failing of the Trudeau government at the federal level, of every single other layer of government. If that's actually what's happening, I'd love to see the data on that. A new analysis by RBC shows nearly 100,000 working-age Canadian women have completely left the workforce since the pandemic started. The figure for men is more than 10 times smaller. How do we get more women to return to the workforce? That's coming up on Rosemary Barton Live. Right, and so this is what I was kind of speaking to at the beginning of the segment. Like, if that's true, again, I haven't seen the data. I'm taking Rosemary's word for it. So, rolling the dice a little bit here. It's CBC after all. But if that's true, then why are women staying out of the workforce? And why is that necessarily a bad thing? Like, if women are doing what they want to do, if they can't find a job and they're looking for a job and they can't find a job, that's a different story altogether. But if women are staying out, and I'll give you an example of a reason I've heard firsthand of people staying out of the workforce. A friend of mine, so the wife's friend, right, of the husband that I'm friends with. Okay, regardless, it doesn't matter. Had a job in a legal style office, and she had a baby, and she was off and coming back to work, and she took a little extended time off, and coming back to work meant that she would have to drop her kid off in daycare masked. She didn't want to do that, and coming back to work meant she would have to wear a mask, and she didn't have a big problem with that necessarily, but she had a bigger problem with masking the kid in daycare. Fine. But once it got down to the nitty gritty of it all, and the ridiculousness of the daily testing and the reality of if your child is sick and blah, 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 ultimately it came down to, it's easier if I just stay home. I'm just going to stay home because, and I want to stay home because the alternative is having to comply with all of this craziness, really, and impacting my child in a negative way. And so that's just one example. And I've heard of other people doing the same thing for similar reasons. And I mean, childcare costs, and there are other things that come into it. But the reality is, like, is there something that we're completely ignoring as society? Or is there something that's been turned that we're not allowed to talk about, but we're not really allowed to address? Like it's a situation where if you mention that maybe women just actually are more interested in children and building their family life, and maybe they'd be happier doing that rather than doing all that and working a full-time job alongside men, blah, 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 blah. Maybe, who knows, right? And maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Like maybe they should be allowed to do that, but we've been taught that if you suggest that, you're misogynistic, you're anti-women, you're whatever. So I don't know. Are we failing women? Are we failing to have the conversation that's necessary to actually get to the bottom of what does happiness mean? Like what does let women do anything mean? Does it mean follow in the path of men and pursue being CEOs and pursue STEM and pursue the path that men traditionally follow, because men are interested in the path that they follow? Women are traditionally interested in a different path, right? How can we get more women into STEM? How can we get more women into CEOs? Why is that important? Like status? Are the women interested in the status? I don't think so. Like, and I'm not trying to speak for women. Like, from what I've seen, a majority of women aren't interested in status like that. There are some who are, but the majority of them aren't. So, and maybe I'm generalizing, but anyway, this I thought was really funny. Meghan and Harry had an interview with Oprah. She wants to be super private or something like that. Seems like an odd thing to do, to interview with Oprah if you want to be private. But hey, you make your choices. But she says, this is according to the Toronto Sun. I didn't watch this interview, and the only reason I'm mentioning this is because it's hilarious to me. Meghan Markle accuses the royals of racism and says they pushed her to the brink of suicide and marrying into the family. It seems like an odd choice, don't you think? Man, your family's so racist, I think I might kill myself. Do you want to get married, though? Call me Mr. Skeptical. I don't know. It seems an odd choice to me. This is an odd thing too, and this is just kind of in line with it's outside of what you would expect. Happy International Women's Day, right? Like, don't do what you want to do. Work on this kind of male track of expectations, please. In order to be a success in our society. That would be great. For our society to see you as a success, you need to do this. Forget the kids, forget the baseball, forget all the stuff that needs doing after school, forget the advocacy, forget all of that. No. Focus on your career. It's all about you. But wear your mask. But this, okay, yeah. Black owned. Can you imagine if a white supremacy group in Canada, say out of Calgary or something like that, right? Those evil Western people, according to Ottawa, some white supremacist group vocally demanded the removal of Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben and any other racialized person in the grocery store represented. And also, if we could please flag all of the Black and Indigenous owned businesses so we could keep track of them. If this had been demanded by that, it would be torn down and ridiculed across papers in Canada and the United States. People would talk about it ad nauseum. But here we are in 2020, and in the name of diversity and equality, we get flags for grocery store items, right? This is a Black owned business, right? This is Hispanic owned business. I think it's jaw-dropping to me. It's jaw-dropping to me. Get rid of those Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben. We've got to rebrand that whole thing. We can't have these pillars of society who built their businesses in unlikely times and built like the industry that other people make store brands from their products and make a good living off of that. No, we got to get rid of those guys and make sure that everybody knows it's a Black-owned business or a Hispanic-owned business. What in the heck kind of crazy world is this? Okay. And this is... So International Women's Day took precedence over budgets because we're not getting a budget this year. Who needs a budget? Who needs a budget? 2 years without a budget. Extraordinary. Imagine if Prime Minister Harper had done that. Liberals rule out March budget as Ottawa assesses economic impact of recent shutdowns, new vaccine timelines. So I didn't open this Globe and Mail. I've got 2 other Globe and Mail article things, and I think that hopefully they'll stay open for me. Sometimes they close down and I lose access to them, but whatever. So I'm not going to open this one because that's basically the whole thing. The budget is not coming. Do we think that we're going to go 3 years without a budget? Maybe next March? Like, are they saying it'll be on April 1st? Right? Chrystia Freeland. Were there other female finance ministers? And Kim Campbell was a deputy PM because she took over for Mulrooney, right? And then lost the snap election that happened there. But have there been notable female or not notable female finance ministers? Is this the first female finance minister that's skipped the budget twice in a row? She didn't technically skip it last time. I guess Morneau was removed. And anyway, budgeting in Canada. Who needs that in a crisis? In a crisis, the thing that I do is I get my credit card out and I max it out. And then I get on the phone and I take out as much new credit cards as they will give me, and I max them out too. And I send all of that money to charity, and I don't worry about the spending. Why? I can't explain it. I can't explain. That's just what I do in a crisis. It seems like a bad idea to me too. Jeepers creepers. Why would Canada do that? I know why Canada is doing this. I understand the Great Reset. I get it. I know. It just when it's in such stark, clear paper that they're not interested in any accounting at all, right? Like, no, please don't send me the bill. I know we're maxed out. Don't send me the bill. It's fine. I'm just going to not answer now. Bye. I'm taking too long. Here is a march in Quebec City in support of allowing kids to resume all-day sports. Yeah. There are people pushing back against what's going on. More elected people speaking out against lockdowns. People are upset. Unacceptable. City councillor calls out province for the handling of the coronavirus. Medicine Hat City Council. And yesterday, Mississauga was or actually last week it was March 3rd, but yesterday I was talking about it on the show. Multiple city councillors are pushing back. Even Bonnie Crombie, who seems really on board with this whole thing, seemed to be breaking a little bit and saying like, okay, it's been 15 weeks. Like, is this permanent now? What are we doing? And I think that's a valid question. It's very, very valid. I don't even think the health units know. Randy Hillier says, well, he's introducing Liberty Coalition Canada's tweet. He says, Lieutenant Colonel David Redmond, former head of emergency management in Alberta, presented a detailed explanation of where our country went wrong in dealing with the pandemic and how our government ignored previously developed emergency plans. I think I spoke about this before, but remember the Parks and Rec episode where the emergency planning situation happens and there's a crisis and they have to manage the crisis, and it's funny and madcap and all that other stuff. But those groups exist and they do game those things out, and they weren't used at all in this. They put together the public health people and gave them basically unilateral power to demand mask mandates without much evidence that they work, and no kind of sunset clause. And so now we're stuck in a very odd Milgram experiment across at least the province of Ontario. Other places are not so bad, but definitely in Ontario, we're enduring some very, very kooky science. So Randy Hillier says, you can now find Lieutenant Colonel David Redmond's full presentation, bio, and other information on my website. He was one of the leaders of the teams who would, like the emergency management teams. And he says, like, this is completely mismanaged, right? It's not me saying it's mismanaged. It's Redmond saying it's mismanaged. And it's worth your time. If you didn't catch it yesterday, check it out. Kingston's medical officer of health has issued a class order starting next weekend, restricting gatherings to a maximum of 5 instead of 50 indoor or 100 outdoor under provincial rules. But he's flat out wrong on fines. He does not have the power to issue a $10,000 fine for hosting a gathering. So St. Patrick's Day is out. St. Patrick's Day is out, everybody. You are not allowed to day drink. You're not allowed to go to a bar. We're done. We're not doing anything anymore. The old culture is gone. Right? The 4 olds, done. Sorry. Ryan O'Connor continues. He says, Dr. Moore claims that Kingston police will be enforcing this order. Will they also hand out fines that don't exist in law? This is the relevant provision from Health Promotion and Protection Act. Read penalties for breaching class orders. Penalty, every person who is guilty of an offense under this act is liable on conviction to face a fine of not more than $5,000 for every day or part of a day which the offense occurs or continues. Kingston Public Health ought to retract this video and issue a clarification instead of scaring the university and college students whom they target with this order. This is yet another example of an Ontario medical officer of health asserting authority without accountability. We ought to consider legislative changes to ensure medical officers of health are held more accountable for their decisions, as I've recently argued for this pandemic and beyond. Yes, I agree with Mr. O'Connor. I think that it would be smart to hold people accountable for the actions they take, especially when they bankrupt entire provinces. And they've done nothing less, these medical officers of health, these people who are implementing the bad policies that are destroying the economy of the province. It's incredible what's being allowed to continue, right? Under the guise of it's for your safety. Breaking 911 reports, West Virginia Governor Jim Justice announced bars, restaurants, small businesses, retail stores, gyms, museums can open to 100% capacity. Go on out, everyone. Have fun. Goodness me. It's interesting how we are stuck, right? We're stuck in embarrassed politicians who failed miserably to put out policy that meaningfully did anything, really. And now they've invested so much money and they can't unring the bell, even in the face of multiple states opening up, right? This is a person talking about COVID is not transmitted on the field. And this guy's responding to that saying, this is wonderful news because it begs the question, why do outdoor sports, especially for children, why is it currently criminalized? Now, this is in the UK, but it does apply here. I think this is in the UK. Yeah, Nottingham. So it's interesting that we're seeing the same bad policies despite no evidence. Here's the Times UK evidence, finds no evidence that COVID transmits on field. So people aren't, generally you don't play high-level sports if you've got a flu-like symptom and you're not asymptomatic. If you're coming down with the flu, not like you kind of know it, but like a flu kind of hits like a ton of bricks, right? And if a COVID or coronavirus is anything like the flu, and it seems like it's kind of like the flu, hits like a ton of bricks maybe, right? Roman Babber says we're at a tipping point as more stakeholders are opposing the lockdown. Toronto's Archbishop says restrictions don't make sense. Martin Ray is calling to resume travel. Some Peel councillors are pushing back against Dr. Lowe. There's three there's three screenshots here. The Archbishop says, makes no sense. Archbishop slams restrictions that allow more people inside a liquor store than a church funeral. And then Anthony Fury, more Peel regional councillors. This is what I was talking about earlier. And it's time to move on. Martin Ray, executives call for end to travel restrictions. Like we can't just say this is the new normal and we're never gonna spin up business the way it was before ever again. We're never gonna have air travel ever again. They're trying for this. This is the 2030 agenda. They're making a play to placate the public so it can get in place so it becomes culture. Culture becomes tradition, and so on and so forth. Tradition becomes culture, right? And it takes less time than you think. That's what they're waiting for. Brian Day, and I don't know if he's UK or here, UBC. So Canada. He says, we asked government across Canada for data on how many surgeries, procedures, and consultations they've postponed since COVID emerged, and there's the report. Over 353,000 postponed surgeries across Canada. This data is shocking. Worse is the fact that BC surgeons whose patients have waited over a year are forced to update the booking forms and the date of bookings, making it appear in the government statistics that patients are waiting a year less than they truly are. So a new case reduces the amount of time in the books, right? Oh, well, they didn't wait that long, right? An urgent warning from air traffic control. We're getting into masking here. The FAA's insistence in wearing masks while speaking to pilots now presents a safety risk. This is real. He sent his ID to confirm his identity. Excuse me. And so this guy says, I work a safety critical job for the federal agency, masks. He says, I'm an air traffic controller for the FAA. I work at one of our ARTCs, which are en route facilities. We work massive amounts of airspace covering the entire country and a large part of oceanic space outside of our borders. A normal day for me is working everything from general aviation to air carriers to military training and operations. We used to have guidance on masks saying wear them around the building when you can't maintain 6 feet, or wear them in position if you have another controller working in your sector with you. Or if training someone, most controllers remove them while talking directly to pilots if working by themselves, which is frequently. And he basically goes on to say that once masks were added, the response rate, people responding that they understand what the air traffic controller is saying, has gone down, and the numbers of say-agains have gone way up. It's very interesting, and he says it's impacting the safety of jets in the air, and that's not great. I don't want to hear that. I don't fly very often, but when I do fly, I don't want to hear that people can't hear what the air traffic instructor is saying, right? Like how many associated accidents have happened because of this? And I don't know. I don't have the numbers, but it doesn't seem like that's good. Here's an anti-lockdown, or here's everything that's wrong with lockdowns, an analysis of the lockdown evidence. And Ivor Cummings says, if you can't find the signal, you kind of have your answer. Speed read it, but it looks like a comprehensive and thorough analysis of the lockdown evidence. Agrees with everything I've been saying. It's a 2020 think tank, so I'll share it with caution, but it's interesting to read what conclusions other people are coming to. I like to look at I like to borrow the intelligence of the people around us, right? We have a lot of people and we have a very connected world. So when smarter people than me look into things like that, I like to read what they found, what the conclusions are and why, like what the reasonings are. And then I compare to the reasonings of public health. And when you get a brick wall or tutting and like, oh, well, you don't believe the science. It's like, I'm not sure that you understand what era we live in. Like this isn't like God has spoken to you through Dr. Tam, right? Like, I'm sorry, Patty Haydu, it's not how it works. Like, you're not Moses on the Mount, man. It just doesn't work. Anyway, here's moving into masking more forcefully, I suppose. Schools in the UK told on Wednesday they can't force pupils to wear masks. Government says children should not be denied education for non-compliance with measures that are voluntary. Snap. Schools told they cannot force pupils to wear masks. Children are not under any obligation to wear face masks. The government said on Wednesday night, telling schools not to send pupils home if they refuse to wear one. While masks and regular COVID tests are strongly encouraged, they are not legal requirements, and pupils should not be denied education as a result of non-compliance, officials said. This is in February 24th, and this is in the United Kingdom. But it's instructive. Again, I like to look around what's going on, and it's seeming like there are some people who are waking up to what's going on, and they're making changes, right? So that's good, I guess. That's good. It's slow, and it's unbelievable how long this is going on. Like it seems so obvious to me, and yet the people who are in charge are so resistant to doing anything about it. And I mean, it's sunk cost, right? Like if you're holding the losing hand, but you believe that, that straight making card's coming on the river, and then it doesn't come on the river, and you're pot committed now, right? You're going to see that hand to the end, probably, right? Maybe even if it makes you go broke. And I think that's where we're in now. That's what we're in. That situation is what we're in now. And I think that people would forgive the leadership if they come clean. But I don't think they're going to come clean. And I don't think we're going to see the ending of restrictions soon. Like, I think it's going to be a really slowly phased in opening up and fear mongering. That's what we're seeing now. We're still seeing it. Here's Randy Hillier. He says the WHO pandemic planning document states face masks are inefficient at reducing viral spread. Have a read of the whole document. We didn't follow the science. And I mean, we've been banging this drum forever. I know you guys know this, but it's interesting having more links. It's interesting having more information. The information doesn't matter sometimes. Patrick Phillips, he's a doctor. He says, coercive public health restrictions defy basic medical ethics. Patients and all persons have the right to choose what is in their best interests. Forcing people into health interventions, quote, for their own good is dangerous and not the role of a doctor. He's responding to Dr. Mirza, and Dr. Mirza says there are 4 pillars of medical ethics as per the attached image. I like that he's quantifying this like there are 4 pillars of medical ethics on this image. Yes, there are. If a public health doctor is the doctor and the people of Ontario are the patients, then how do we apply medical ethics? And I thought, reading through this, I paused. Well, I paused on number 3. And it's the 4 pillars of medical ethics are 1, beneficial, doing good. 2, non-malfeasance, to do no harm. 3, autonomy, giving the patient the freedom to choose freely where they are able. 4, justice, ensuring fairness. Justice? Now, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but all of this seems a little bit like there's bigger loopholes being created. Oh, this person's not able to choose for themselves right now, so we have to default to number 1 and 2, which is doing harm or doing good to do no harm. So I'm going to give him the vaccine because he doesn't know, he isn't able to choose. I'll choose for him. I fear it's a slippery slope. Maybe I'm misreading that. But yeah, I feel like informed consent is important, and I feel like a lot of, well, this is an ethics conversation and not necessarily informed consent, but I think informed consent is part of ethics. Like if you're saying that this is a healthy, safe vaccine, but in reality it's in trials, which is what was happening in Israel. They were being told it was safe, but actually Israel was giving data back to Pfizer to finalize their trials. Helsinki protocols were instituted. I don't even know what happened with that. I should probably look. But that's ethically not so good, right? Like that violates informed consent. That violates the Nuremberg codes, right? Like that's not so good. So medical ethics, how does that apply? Isn't that like ethics 101? Isn't that like how does these 4 points fit into the Nuremberg code? Right? I'd love to Twitter's poor to break things apart and really kind of figure out what people think, because it's hard to understand exactly what people are getting at in a tweet like this, right? Like Dr. Misra's tweet. But it seems like they're trying to further debase the basic rights of people to decide what's good for them, right? Well, society says that this vaccine protects us, and if you want to protect society with us, you should take the vaccine and not listen to all of that Russian fake news. Influenza cases. So few influenza cases. Canada can't declare the start of flu season yet. Can we see the COVID curve? Can we put the COVID curve compared to the flu for the last 5 years, please? Online trolls based in Russia are working to spread fake news about COVID-19 vaccines. Yep. So the fake news Russian people wanted Trump to get in, and they did a whole bunch of stuff, and now they're really interested in COVID-19 vaccines. Those fake news Russian guys are very interested in exactly the same things as what our government is misstepping in, it seems like, right? Like they're just all over it. Whenever our government missteps, they want to make sure those Russians are very interested in Canadian politics, and they want to make sure that Canadian public see the misstep for what it is. Those Russian trolls. Right? Do you speak Russian? Do you idly check what's going on in the nitty gritty of Russian politics? Do you sometimes troll Russian boards? How likely do you think this is? Russian trolls. Come on. I mean, I have no doubt that there are agencies that there are people who learn languages, and English is a particularly good language to learn, and Canadians are maybe a little bit more susceptible to being trolled, maybe. But I just can't imagine Russian trolls would be that. Nobody's that interested in Canadian politics. Nobody cares that much. Dave Aiken says there's indeed a lot of chatter about whether or where Canada ranks globally on vaccine progress. I think Canadian voters are really only care about how we're doing versus the US, and most would note that we're a bit behind the US, but catching up. US is 500,000 deaths, Canada has 25,000 deaths. And there's absolutely no way the demographics have anything to do with that, nor the movement of Como to put people in old age homes who have COVID-19. There's nothing, don't look there. Don't listen. I think that there's Russian trolls in this broadcast. Oh my goodness, right? It's unbelievable. But I think that it's funny, too, that Dave Aiken minimizes how poorly we're doing. We're in 58th place or something like that, 57th place last I saw. And he's trying to say, no, people don't care about that. People don't care about that. I care about the loss of our civil liberties. I care about the fact that people like Dave Aiken don't get upset about the loss of our civil liberties and instead are reporting on the vaccine like it's a sport. And I'm not interested in the vaccine. I'm upset that we don't have therapeutics that are being utilized like ivermectin and HCQ to open our economy quickly. I'm upset that our politicians don't seem to be interested and our public health doesn't seem to be interested in therapies that work, and the fact that most of the people who are dying are above 80, and these people aren't going out to nightclubs, and they're not generally going out to salons or bars and restaurants generally, right? So why are we closing them? I have a problem with all of that. I think that it's interesting that our biggest, like Dave Aiken's, he's a bureau chief for politics. Yeah, chief political correspondent, Global News. He blocked me. He blocked my main account on Mark Peralivas as soon as he got this job. He announced it because I followed him. I think he lives in Guelph. He's around Guelph. He used to watch Guelph baseball games. So I followed him for a while. And he had Minding Ottawa, the spending thing, which I thought was interesting. But as soon as he took this job, he blocked me. And I thought that was hilarious because, you're right, chief political correspondent, right? That doesn't want me following him. But this is the nonsense that the chief political correspondent comes up with? Nonsense. Hack. Seriously. Ridiculous. Do your job, man. Seriously. Oh, well, it's not so bad. Look at all the deaths that we didn't have. Shut up. Okay. Austria suspends Astrazeneca COVID-19 vaccine batch after death. Austrian authorities have suspended inoculations with a batch of AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine as a precaution while investigating the death of one person and the illness of another after the shots, a health agency said on Sunday. Can you wait till we get all those vaccines in our arms, right, Dave Aiken? Hey, Dave Aiken, right? And once we get all those vaccine in our arms, can you wait till we can take off the mask? Oh, we can't take off our masks. Right. Thank you. National Post says getting vaccinated doesn't mean you can party like it's 2019. Why you can't ditch your mask post-vaccination? Shucks. So we can't travel. We'll have to still wear a mask. And we get sick when we get the vaccine. Please, can we continue 2021? Here is, this video is sped up. I'll play a little bit of it. Happening now in Israel. Yesterday I showed you somebody talking about the Green Pass and medical apartheid. Today is somebody else speaking out from Israel. Happening now in Israel. Video speed is increased. Full video link below. So she's talking about how terrible things are in Israel because they're forcing the vaccine, even on kids as young as 16. And I don't think it's been trialed on anybody younger than 18. Anyway, here we go.
6 years. I can't do I can't go to the choir. I can't join my pool. They won't even give me my money back for my membership to the pool that they won't let me in anymore.
Right.
We're allowed
the pool with loads of chlorine in the water. Well, you couldn't possibly catch this.
Exactly. You can't get into your pools, in the gyms. They've kind of made it so, I think so they would put malls on the table to keep us out of it. And maybe only some are adhering and some aren't. You have some businesses. It's still playing out because again, there's no there's no science here that this is based on. So it's all willy-nilly. You've got, it changes every day. This morning, they're going to not let you in here. But what's happening actually is on a terrifying level at the airports. Just this morning, there was a man who wrote up his personal experience coming into the airport and his mother having been a survivor from Auschwitz. And he literally felt like he was in a selection. It was literally, did you have the vaccine or have you recovered from the virus? Go to the right. And if you haven't, you go to the left, you get this thing jammed up your nose and they ship you off to these filthy Corona hotels. You're like a prisoner in your own state. It's not even, or you can use, or I think in some cases, again, I can't be completely specific because it changes from minute to minute, or they give you the security ankle bracelet, which you get to pay the privilege of having, being a prisoner in your own home, 2,000 shekels per leg,
Interesting. She mentions Canada as well. She name checks Canada. She says it's worse in Canada. Blah, blah, blah. You can't even go home. You have to stay in the hotel. Here's Kyle Delphing. He said, at least the vaccine passport won't exemplify racism. Winning. So there's the vaccinated and unvaccinated, right? Happy International Women's Day. Here's Patty Haydu. Susie says this failed health minister who has lied constantly is pushing for a vaccine passport when, in fact, she cannot get vaccine supplies to Canadians. Vaccine passport for international travel. Very live discussion among G7 countries. So here we go. This is CTV, right? This is March 7th. Today is March 8th. And they say, as countries continue to vaccinate larger segments of their populations, Federal Health Minister Patty Haydu says that discussions about introducing some form of vaccine passport are very live among G7 countries. We're certainly working on the idea of vaccine passports with our G7 partners. I was on a call with my G7 health minister counterparts just a couple of weeks ago, and that is a very live issue, Haydu said in an interview on CTV's Question Period. While Haydu wouldn't say if it's an idea Canada is pushing for, requiring some form of proof of vaccination to travel to Canada, she said other nations and industry groups are looking into the kind of evidence of documentation that could be requested in order to travel internationally. Some European countries have begun to signal they'll be requesting proof of immunization against COVID-19 to allow foreign travelers to enter in a similar way to how nations like Canada are requiring non-essential visitors to show a pre-departure negative test. I scroll down a little bit more. The federal government continues to strongly advise against international travel as the threat of variant spread continues to be a pressing concern. So they're using variants to generate fear about moving or about continuing to travel, which is scary, right? Canada doesn't have a centralized database or even very good record keeping provincially on who has had the vaccine. Interesting how countries are managing the inoculated versus non-inoculated. Canada's approach, whatever that is, will no doubt be controversial. Here's the Globe and Mail article about that. COVID-19 vaccine passports are coming. Is Canada ready? Right? So here it's the same thing. They're talking about the Green Pass. It is digital technocratic communism. It is medical apartheid. It is a very concerning situation. Link is in the description to read this article because I am not going to read it right now. It's describing the same stuff. It's telling you about what Israel is doing, but it's lighting it. It's putting it in a good light. It's saying this is positive. This is freedom. I don't know. I don't think so. Into line 5. Hold on a second. We'll get to line 5 in just a minute. First is the sexual misconduct against Admiral Mcdonald came to light. Breaking exclusive on Global National how the allegations of sexual misconduct against Admiral Mcdonald came to light. A 21-year Navy veteran attempted to report the allegations to the minister's office and the military and the threats he is now facing for coming forward. So here's that teaser. Here's the article. Royal Canadian Navy officer was threatened after reporting McDonald's allegation, sources. Now, it's interesting. He was trying to report to the minister. Same situation that we're seeing for Vance, and now he's being threatened. That's very interesting. And here is Saijan. People are calling for accountability here, but I don't think that we're going to get any accountability. Here is Suzanne Allen. She says, where's the accountability with Minister Saijan? This is unacceptable, and he should resign. Saijan had a duty to pursue misconduct claim against Vance, says former military members. So people are saying that really the double standard is we've had quite enough of that. But again, do I think this is going to translate to votes against Trudeau or votes for other people? I mean, no, I don't think O'Toole's inspiring. I think if people do vote for Trudeau or they do flee the Liberal Party, they're not going to be running to the Conservative Party. That well's been not poisoned, but I don't think O'Toole is really connecting with a lot of voters. I thought Andrew Scheer, honestly, was doing a better job at appealing to a wider group of voters. And I don't know what's going to happen in the next federal election. I have no idea. I have no idea at this point in time. But I don't know that stuff like this is enough to push the Canadian public to abandon the Liberal Party, honestly. And I don't know the Conservative Party is enough to push it, to challenge it. And I think that the PPC is not positioned in such a way to take advantage of the misstep of the CPC's complete failure at this point in time. They're not resonating. And show me I'm wrong if I'm wrong. I haven't seen it though. I haven't seen it on Twitter before 2019, before they run up to the election. And I'm talking like February, March, April 2019, even through summer 2019. People were sharing things that were being shared by Bernier. People were talking about things that he was saying. There were lots of speeches, lots of press. I don't see it now. I don't see the energy. There's no energy. And like the wind came out of the sails on the 21st of October. And it's been like 5 people going since then. And like maybe that's my failing too. I don't know. I've tried to reach out, but I don't know. And the rest of it, like the Bloc, sure, maybe they might pick up some seats, I guess. The NDP, I think they're imploding. I think Jagmeet Singh is a poor leader, but I think with Trudeau misstepping, maybe he maintains the seats, maybe, 10 to 14 at this point in time? Maybe up to 20, right? So it'll be a mirror of the parliament we've got, probably with a Trudeau majority, slim majority, 275, 277, something like that. Maybe even less. And so I'm not holding my breath. I'm not holding my breath for anything to change, because the landscape has shifted dramatically, but nobody seems to have taken advantage of that. Not Trudeau, he's just squandered it, but he hasn't done anything egregious enough that is bigger than SNC-Lavalin or bigger than any of the scandals up till now. This is a failing of his minister. It's not going to touch Trudeau, right? The minister might go down, but that's about it. And Bardiche Chagger was on deck to go down for We Next, right? But I don't know that they can blame her for the next thing. But it's very interesting that this isn't going to change anything. It's not, unfortunately. And it's one more thing. It's one more arrow in the quiver of a reasonably competent political war room to use that to your advantage. But there is no reasonably competent political war room that I'm aware of on the right ever, or anywhere. There's nobody talking about it, as far as I'm aware. There's a couple of people maybe talking here and there, but nobody with any kind of power or pull is talking realistically about any kind of good strategy to fight what the collective left has done. Nobody's talking about it, and that's scary. Facing unrest within his own UCP party is Alberta Premier Jason Kenney's political future at risk. Jason Kenney is doing a good job at destroying the United Conservatives, because he's not a conservative, I suppose. His game is to lead the United Conservative Party just the same way that Mulroney and everybody led Canada through the transition years to get to the point we're at now, right? Where they can spring the trap, right? The Great Reset, right? Oh, we've bankrupted you, and now we need to buy all your debt. And you'll own nothing, and you'll be super happy about it. That's what they said, right? Maybe that's what Jason Kenney's game is. But I think that if the UCP fractures and we see like a Wild Rose party or something like that, unless Wild Rose comes out and gets a whole bunch of the seats to either be a strong opposition party or take the leadership in a minority or something to that effect, then they'll have NDP, and that's not great. And we'll see Alberta. Well, we'll see the Conservative infighting for a few years. Maybe they'll try and unite under the Wild Rose Party because they don't trust Kenney. But what'll happen? Same thing. It'll be a different Kenney, a different person like Kenney wearing the Kenney-like suit, playing the same Kenney game, right? That's riding that fence between the Conservatives and the broader Liberal base, and realizing that the far left people have taken over all of the other parties. And if you have a centrist party, then maybe you win more votes, right? But I don't know. That's maybe the game, but I think it's going to blow up in his face. Michigan pipeline fight could cut off half of Ontario's oil. I've been talking about this a while. The Globe and Mail just finally caught up, right? Globe editorial: a Michigan pipeline fight could cut off half of Ontario's oil supply. Are you there, Joe? Are you there, Joe? Sleepy Joe? The threat to Enbridge's Line 5 pipeline. The issue is similar to that of the twice vetoed Keystone XL pipeline, but with a twist. This time, it's not about blocking Canadian oil exports to the United States. Line 5's oil is Canadian oil shipped to Canadians by way of a shortcut through Michigan. At stake is roughly half the oil Ontario uses every day, including all of the jet fuel at Toronto Pearson International Airport and supplies to Quebec as well. Until the Line 6B spill, that's what opened the article, no one in Michigan took much notice of Line 5. After 2010, it suddenly became the focus of intense opposition. So they blame a spill, but it's a media opposition. So this is a political opposition to this oil pipeline that is Canadian oil sending to Canada. Okay, since 1953, 2 pipes have run across the strait underwater. Former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, a Republican, struck a deal with Enbridge in 2018 to build a tunnel to bury and encase Line 5. Construction is scheduled to start this year and finish in 2014. But when Democrat Gretchen Whitmer became governor, the shutting down of Line 5 was one of her campaign promises. The state sued Enbridge in 2019 to shut down Line 5, and last November, Ms. Whitmer moved to revoke and terminate a 1953 easement the state claims Enbridge has violated, giving the company until May 12th to comply. I thought it was the 18th. Enbridge sues Michigan in federal court to block what it describes as Michigan's illegal actions. The company argues Line 5 is federally regulated and has been recently deemed fit for service. Ottawa last week said oil moving through Line 5 was non-negotiable and it could invoke a 1977 Canada-U.S. treaty to force binding arbitration. A Michigan court recently ordered Enbridge and the state to seek to settle the dispute through mediation, and the U.S. courts are where the Line 5's fate will hopefully be resolved in Canada's favor. However, there are no guarantees of that, which is why Ottawa needs to get President Joe Biden to intervene with Ms. Whitmer, the co-chair of his presidential campaign. But Mr. Biden, just like Ms. Whitmer, faces domestic political pressures pushing in the other direction, and in any case, the president is just one of many actors in the U.S. system. All that's certain is that another pipeline important to Canada is on the verge of being blocked by American politics. It was bad enough for the U.S. to kill the unfinished Keystone XL. Shutting down a key Canadian link that had operated safely for decades would be far worse. Line 5 choked dry would be a blow to Canada-U.S. relations worse than anything from Mr. Trump. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting that the Globe and Mail is on this, and they're dooming a little bit. There's a little bit of dooming going on there, so we'll see how that works out, right? Here is CP24. Canada's real estate market is clearly overheating, but policy makers are not moving to cool things, citing the fragile economic situation brought on by COVID-19. What do you think would happen to the real estate prices if the Line 5 gets shut down? Do you think maybe a correction would happen then? If you couldn't afford to drive to the grocery store? If gas was rationed for trucks to get food to the grocery store? Goodness gracious me. But imagine the possibilities for the green agenda if half the gas got shut off. Go Greens, go! Do everything you've promised for the last decade. Money is no object. We're saved. No? No. Okay. Canada's tourism industry is facing a crisis greater than the combined impact of September 11th, 2001, the SARS outbreak, and the global financial crisis, according to a new report. Yes, can we blame that? Can we put that squarely at the feet of the inept government, from the mayors, municipal, to the premiers, provincial, to the federal MPs? They've all been inept. There's like a handful of people who said what we're doing is insane, and that's it. They were ignored. That was it. They were ignored. Pierre Poilievre, this is just another reminder that the Wee Brothers are being threatened to have the sergeant at arms brought in and deployed to bring them in to testify to Parliament. And apparently these powers are as old as Parliament themselves, or Parliament itself. So very interesting that we may see the sergeant at arms bring the Wee Brothers in, right? Whew. Mark Kielburger, a very interesting switch of fortunes, considering he was on the 2019 debate commission, right? Like he was one of the people on the 2019. He put together the 2019 election debate. Very interesting. I was talking yesterday about the Pope arriving in Iraq, and everybody seemed happy. And now he's moving on to Rome. So after a historic whirlwind visit, Pope leaves Iraq for Rome. I guess he was just visiting. I don't know. Very interesting stuff. Crazy stuff happening in our world. There was some interesting speculation in the comments yesterday about why the Pope was in Iraq. I chuckled at a few of them. And I don't know. But I guess we'll see how things shape up. The world is a crazy, crazy place. And the people who are governing it don't seem to want to make it any less crazy or less confusing. They definitely seem to want to continue to confuse us. So there's that. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.